In today's video, we're going to take a first look at LightAct. Thanks for joining us again at the Hive School, where we help you one-up your workflows. We promised at the start of this year that we cover a wider range of media servers and production software. Today we're excited to show you what you need to know to get started with the brilliant LightAct. Head to lightact.com/download. Once you've filled out a few questions, you'll be able to download the installer and get started. This is the interface you'll see once you've installed LightAct. You've got the main viewport taking up the biggest slice of your interface. Left click is for selecting objects. Right click and drag to orbit around. Use your mouse wheel to dolly in and out. And click that mouse wheel button to pan around the space. The left hand side of the interface you have the toolbar where you can add objects to your scene like screens and projectors. One of the things that I really like about LightAct interface is how customizable it is. You can pick up the panels and move them around into whatever configuration that makes sense for the task that you're doing. If you head up to the edit menu, you'll see that they've given you some starter interfaces for common tasks like playback, programming and mapping. You can save and load your layouts or reset back to a default. While I've been getting started with LightAct, something that's been really helpful to me is the quick tips window for reminding me what keyboard shortcuts are available. You can bring that up by hitting one of the eye icons. The quick tips panel is dockable if you want to keep your space tidy. Another way we can get help on our LightAct journey is to head to the user manual. This icon at the top of the quick tips panel will take us there, or we can access it via the help menu at the top of the interface too. If you've previously got experience programming Disguise or Pixera media servers, then I'd have a look at their guides getting started from one of those foundations. I think it's smart of the LightAct guys to recognise that they're part of a larger media server ecosystem and to give people a jumping off point that takes into account their existing skills. Moving along, you have your timelines at the bottom. Starting out, you'll only have a single timeline, but you can add more. The currently selected timeline appears at the bottom of the screen, and on the right-hand side of the interface is the Properties panel. This feels really comfortable to me after years of using software like Cinema 4D. I'm going to delete the default screens in the project so that we can start to look at some of the ways we can create our show in LightAct. You can add screens to your viewport by right-clicking and selecting Video Screen, or you can click and drag them from the toolbar, either clicking to select which kind of screen you want, or using one of the number keys on your keyboard to select. With the screen selected, you can head over to the Properties panel on the right and set its exact coordinates and screen resolution. I'm going to increase its size and set it to the centre of our viewport. Since this is a first day video, let's have a look at how we assign some content to screens before adding anything further to our project. We really want this video to focus on the main steps you need to get started. You can always come back and build out a more fully fledged project once you've got the basics down. If you right click on the timeline, it'll bring up a context menu that allows you to add templates to your timeline. I think I'd call a template a layer in a different system, but I'm trying hard to use the correct LightAct terminology here. Take note of the keyboard shortcuts next to your template types. Things like V plus left mouse button and I plus left mouse button are going to speed up your programming workflow if you can get those memorized. Let's try out some of the generative templates and add a color grid. We can stretch that out to be as long as we'd like on our timeline, but we won't see anything on our screen until we assign it using the mapping parameter from our properties on the right. Right now you can see we've got a default name of Video Screen 0 that LightAct has generated for us. Let's click it to make that assignment, but I really think that needs updating. You can go to your Objects panel at the top right and give your screen a new name. Thank you for spending time with us at the Hive School. This is one of our first day videos where we'll try and give you all the knowledge to start using a piece of software you've maybe not tried before. If you enjoy this format, we also have first day videos for Disguise, Notch and Resolume. Why not give them a watch after you've finished learning about LightAct? If you'd like to support us in creating more of these kind of videos and you feel like we've earned it, why not consider buying us a coffee? Go to our Ko-fi page at ko-fi.com/hiveschool. Okay, so that's pretty fun. Cool to have your media server generate your grids for you, right? Obviously, we're going to want to bring our own content in and play that back. If you check the user guide, you'll see that NotchLC and HAP are the supported codecs. So let's grab a clip in NotchLC to bring into our project. Here's an old R&D clip from the Avenged Sevenfold tour we did last year. I'm going to drag it into the Assets panel, and from there I can press V and left mouse button to add a video template to my timeline. In order to map it, instead of using the mapping parameter like we used first time around with the colour grid, this time let's drag from the viewport onto our layer to assign our mapping that way. With that selected, I can go down to the video asset drop down and add my clip. Depending on how you've got your screen laid out, you may need to expand the right side of your interface where your properties are to see some extra icons. It's the first icon next to many of the properties that I want to draw your attention to. This enables the curves editor for that property, allowing you to set keyframes. When selected, you can go down to your timeline and open up the curves editor and add those keyframes to do your program. We're not going to get too deep into timeline programming here in our first day video, as we'll likely come back for a more in-depth look at LightAct timeline programming in a future episode. Let's try some other ways to map our content. I think this will make a bit more sense if we add some more screens. Select your screen in the viewport, press Shift on your keyboard and drag it to duplicate it. I'm going to reduce its size to 8 by 4.5 meters and knock its resolution down to 1920 by 1080 in the parameters on the right. Then, once more, let's shift and drag it to make a screen on the other side. Because I'm a bit OCD, let's check the X value for our first small screen and then copy that over without the minus to our new one, making them exactly the same distance from the center as each other. Again, to keep things neat and to make my brain less itchy, I'm going to head to the Objects panel and rename those screens to something that makes a little bit more sense to me. To use Stage Right IMAG and Stage Left IMAG. From our toolbar on the left, we can bring in something that LightAct calls a thrower. This is a way of mapping content onto multiple screens from a given perspective. There are perspective, cubic and spherical throwers, but we're just going to look at the perspective one today. Like we did before, we can drag our thrower from the viewport onto our video template to assign that mapping. However, until we give the thrower some screens to apply content to, we won't see anything on our stage. If we left click on one of our screens and look in the parameters on the right, you'll see a section called Sources, which governs which objects can draw to the screen. I'm not sure if this is a bug or if I'm just plain doing it wrong, but I've not been able to apply my thrower to the screen this way. Instead, left-click your thrower and drag it to a screen and you'll see that your sources updates. And if you've got any content playing, it will now be perspective mapped from your thrower onto your screen. Rinse and repeat to add your throwers as sources to your other two screens. If you left-click your thrower, you can modify your field of view by opening up the frustum settings, allowing you to throw that image wide enough to cover all of your screens. The next thing we want to look at is canvases. A canvas is a 2D mapping type that lets you sample your content and apply it to different screens in your project. I've deliberately avoided using language from other servers in this tutorial as I want to present LightAct on its own merits. But I think it's impossible to ignore here. If you know Disguise, a canvas is LightAct's answer to a feed map. You create a canvas by going up to the top of your interface. If you're not in it, select the thumbnails panel at the top. Hit the add button to make a new one. I feel like it's useful to have your content available while using a canvas, so the first thing I do is left click and drag it onto a layer to assign the canvas as the selected map. Now we can double click to edit it. In the panel that opens, we have our available content in the box above the line and our available surfaces below the line. In the down arrow and dragging from our content to our center screen is an obvious mapping as they're using the same resolution. With one of our IMAG screens, we can scale down proportionally by clicking one of the handles to scale it and holding the control key on the keyboard. Say we only want to sample the center 1920 by 1080 pixels for our other screen. We can shift and drag on our content above the line, I couldn't see a way to stay proportional or accurate in this first step. So what I will do is I've drawn a box, then right click in order to edit it. I can then set the values that we know that we want, which will be 1920 by 1080 pixels. We can then use a trick to center it. Drag it down to the bottom right corner and then divide your width and height positions by 2 in order to center it mathematically. Working in 3840 by 2160, I'm sure many of you might have known to set those values to 960 and 540, but this trick will work on any size canvas, so it could be really useful when working with non-standard ratios. Something that might not be totally obvious from the outset is that LightAct is underpinned by a node-based system in almost every area. If we right-click one of our screens in the canvas setup, we can select Create Layout. This will open some of the nodes that govern this screen and add things like warp. This is starting to head into areas beyond the scope of a first day video, but it's exciting to know that it's there when you want to dive a little bit deeper. If we quit out our canvas setup, you can see how the changes that we made have affected the content on our screens. Now that we've got content into our timeline and mapped onto screens, it seems logical that we look at how to get our content outputting from our machine. Head up to the window menu at the top of the screen and down to output. This should feel really familiar now that we've had a look at canvases. Above the line in the center of this panel, we have our screens, and below, although currently empty right now, will be the physical video outputs from your system. On the right hand side of the outputs panel, you can see the physical outputs detected by LightAct. We can assign to one of those. This is always something that we find difficult to show on video tutorials. Either we don't have extra screens hooked up in order to simulate outputs, or if we do, you kind of have to take our word for it that we're seeing outputs where we've mapped them. The main thing to know is if you accidentally set your output to your GUI monitor, then the keyboard command that you need to be able to get it back is Ctrl-Shift-T. You can then Alt-Tab back to LightAct and modify your output settings to a different screen. If you stuck with us this far, then you shouldn't have any issues using LightAct on some simple shows. We've covered creating screens, mapping content, dropping keyframes, and setting up output. We're coming back to LightAct in future videos to explore some of the more in-depth features. In the meantime, why not join us on the Hype School Discord, where we've got a channel dedicated to talking all things LightAct. I'll drop the link in the description below, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.